border czar Tom Homan he climbed down from the walls of the Kremlin, and he walked over his Kremlin, of course, his American Kremlin. Came over to Minnesota to take charge after Bovino got expelled. Now, I keep getting asked a very simple question, and I understand it. And that question is, who was Bovino? Where did he come from? Who is this guy? I don't know this dude. Like, he just kind of popped out of nowhere, and now he was like leading like CBP, like an army out there. I mean, you would see him with like smoke grenades, like flashbangs, and anything that they could, anything to just throw and get into the crowd and get protesters riled up. It looked like he was just bringing in a whole bunch of nonsense. And then you see clips like this coming out of this guy.
Arrest as many people that touch you as you want to. Those are the general orders all the way to the top. Everybody fucking gets it if they touch you. You hear what I'm saying? There's less legals. We're going to look at shipping tractor trailer loads of that shit in here. So you catch what I'm...
So he's talking about, firing, pepper balls. He's talking about, all of the flashbangs they can throw into the crowd, rubber bullets, the things that are typically considered less lethal, but of course, still very violent, still very painful.
It's all about us now. It ain't about them. Professional, legal, ethical, and moral. You know what we're talking.
Also, by the way, I've seen tear gas canisters literally pierce the skulls of people, and like the tear gas come out, and not in person, but I've seen videos of this stuff. The tear gas canisters, a lot of these things, when you talk about less than lethal, it means that typically it's less than lethal. Not that it's always less than lethal. A lot of times these less than lethals can lead to people dying. You could shove somebody over, their head hits the pavement, and they die. And so it's not, when you say less than lethal, we mean typically less than lethal. So, I mean, these are used for crowd control in the most unfortunate of circumstances, but those circumstances seem to be more and more prevalent in Minneapolis right now, at least in the determination of Greg Bovino.
About us now, it ain't about them. Professional, legal, ethical, and moral. You know what we're talking about. Legal, ethical, moral. You're on camera. But other than that, it's what we do. Fucking ours. This is our fucking city.
It's our effing city. This type of message is only going to get more and more pushback from locals. This is your city. Is that why I'm getting carded by people who won't identify themselves, but they need to know my identity and see my paperwork? Papers, please. Papers, please. Show me your papers. Do you have the paperwork? Papers, please. Nobody wants that on their streets. Nobody likes to hear about, an old man being dragged out in the middle of the night because ICE wanted to ignore a judicial warrant and instead say that they can make warrants themselves, an administrative warrant, and go in there and drag out the wrong person only to drop him off after dragging him out in his shorts in the freezing cold, bare-chested, hours later. Nobody wants that. And so this guy with this message, after multiple bodies have now been put in the street, was not the message that Donald Trump wanted to keep going forward with, as more and more of the American public were starting to not only not like the individual shootings, the majority of the American people did not think the shooting of Renee Good was justified. A vast majority of the American people believed the shooting of Alex Parenti was not justified. You have tons of videos coming out of interactions between American citizens, non-American citizens, just about anyone you can believe, getting harassed by ICE, being papered for their accent, being papered for just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, being papered while walking around, whether they're U.S. citizens, whether they have residency, whether they have an asylum case open or not. Not to mention, there have been many instances of ICE officers just basically snapping, tackling 17-year-olds to the ground because they insulted them outside of Target, and then like dropping them off bruised and battered like 2 hours later. This type of behavior getting videotaped again and again and again in this age of transparency has built up more and more resentment for ICE, to the point where a plurality of Americans want to see ICE done away with. It used to be that if you called for the abolishment of ICE, people thought you don't want immigration enforcement. Now there's a distinction between having ICE and having some form of immigration enforcement, because there was immigration enforcement in this country before there was ICE, immigrations and customs enforcement. Now, this man gets done away with. He gets the boot. He's not too happy about the demotion, but he gets demoted from his position that was created. Again, this guy comes into purview because a position was created, commander of large of operations. This is a position they just created in Border Patrol in order for him to circumvent who was the chief of Customs and Border Patrol, Mike Banks, and the commissioner, Rodney Scott. So this was not something that was known about before. He basically had a position made specifically for him as the Trump loyalty pick, and then was sent down to Minneapolis to enforce Trump's orders to do large sweeping operations in the interior of the country, trying to pick up basically anyone they can that was undocumented, which then led to a lot of American citizens getting carded, which has now led to deadly incidents. And of course, with the way that DHS's internal policies contradict with their handbook when it comes to warrants, conflict after conflict with a bad guy at the head was leading to a disaster for Trump, to the point where now it's a question on whether or not he can even lead on the issue of immigration going into the midterms and going into the 2028 election, whoever runs in his place, if he doesn't run again. Either way, this is a situation that Homan walked into. And I am hearing dialogue from right-wing leaders right now as if sending Homan in and of itself was, there you go, there's your de-escalation. Now Democrats have to pass DHS funding. Oh, you know, that's our de-escalation. The issue has been solved. But if you listen to Democratic leadership, they're talking in a different tone.
The American people, hundreds of millions of folks, saw a cold-blooded killing of Alex Pretty. He was called by the Trump administration a would-be assassin and a domestic terrorist. No, that was a malignant lie. We know he was an ICU nurse.
Well, the president has already sent in Tom Homan to remedy the things that you're talking about.
Veteran, I hope so, but it remains to be seen.
All right, Leader Jeffrey.
So it remains to be seen is the message from Hakeem Jeffries. If you listen to Tim Walz talk about it, Tim Walz being the governor of Minnesota, he is saying that, like, look, I think that Bovino was a clown. He was somebody just doing crazy sweeps in the country. He's not great. He's not fantastic. He's bad. We're great. He's gone. Homan, while we might have ideological disagreements, this is what he told Tim Miller of The Bulwark, while we might have ideological disagreements, I believe that he is a professional. And that is the message that he's running with right now as he's trying to find some compromises with the Trump administration to limit operations and roll back the scale of the impact on locals while engaging back and forth with the Trump administration. Because he has had a dialogue with Donald Trump and he has had dialogue with Homan. So Tim Walz is getting a lot of heat for that, especially because he's placing trust in Homan before saying, if he said something like, look, I am going to give him a chance because we don't have much of a choice. There are lives on the line there. We need to de-escalate, and, you know, we need to try to make sure that the laws are followed, that people have warrants, and we need to find compromise. If he was saying something like that, then okay, but he placed a decent amount of trust in Homan, almost sticking out his neck for him in this opportunity. And this is how Homan opened his press conference.
I didn't come to Minnesota for photo ops or headlines. You haven't seen me. I came here to seek solutions, and that's what we're going to do. And we've come a long way, and we got some good wins for the people of Minnesota, I think, and for the administration and for the safety security of this city. One thing we did agree on, though, everybody I talked to agreed on, was that community safety is paramount.
So he goes out there and he takes a softer tone. He is much more of he has much more of a career in this type of bureaucratic role, in this representative role in media. Homan, in comparison to other people in the Trump administration, is probably better under a camera. Bovino, in his interview with CNN, after delivering his crazy speech about a massacre that never happened and never would, he just fell under pressure. He couldn't answer questions. He pivoted away. It's not Homan doesn't pivot away, but he doesn't look necessarily too slimy. If he does pivot away, he knows how to engage very politely, very with a soft tone. He is not going out there making bombastic, crazy claims that are necessarily popping up before the eyes. I guess the point is he's much better at this game than Bovino is. I guess I don't want to say game. I don't want to, but when you talk about being able to be a public face and playing the media and being able to go out there and be a better representative head of the operation, Homan absolutely can do that. The optics of the operation under Homan is going to be much better for the administration in comparison to the optics of Bovino throwing tear gas grenades into the crowd while saying, "This is our fucking city." You know, those optics are just not great. And that behavior is, quite frankly, repulsive. It's the type of thing you would hear from somebody who wants to occupy a city, not protect it from these criminals and murderers that Trump keeps talking about, when the majority of people being detained, again, are not criminals and murderers. But if that's the message, he sounds like an occupying army. He does not sound like somebody who's there to help. Now, Homan immediately goes into a message saying, hey, you know, we have an important operation here. We have to go after criminals. We've done good things, you know, going after, you know, the worst of the worst. Of course, with the Trump administration and with Homan, the focus is always with the worst of the worst. But in Minnesota, the majority of the people that they have grabbed are not criminals. They are not somebody with violent histories. They are not drug dealers. They are not gangbangers. They are not smugglers. They are not thieves. They are not the things that they say. There are people sitting in prisons right now who are undocumented, who have criminal charges, that they're actually currently negotiating the status of handing over those people, possibly in return for the administration not going after non-criminals in the state, people without those violent records. When Donald Trump did say on the campaign trail, who is he going to go after? He's going to go after the violent criminals. He's going to go after the murderers. He's going after the rapists. He's going after like the worst image of the people who make up the undocumented community you can imagine. The worst of the worst of the people who are here undocumented. That was the message on the campaign trail, but that's not always, and actually, in fact, that's most of the time what has not been borne out. Very quickly, they found out that there was not just a bunch of rapists sitting under the floorboards that the Biden administration could have just plucked up at any time and flung away. There's actually very few of those. And so that meant that a few months in, they wanted to pick up operations. Stephen Miller's wanted to hit these quotas that a lot of Democrats don't even like that exist in the first place. And operations ramped up, and certain things like the 4th Amendment and the 10th Amendment and other things started getting lost in the process. So Homan comes up here and he gives a conciliatory message saying that the federal government has not been perfect. That's putting it lightly.
That said, I'm not here because the federal government has carried its mission out perfectly. First thing I said to senior staff when I walked in here is what I told you earlier. I didn't come here looking for photo ops or headlines. I come here looking for solutions. I do not want to hear that everything's been done here has been perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. Anything can be improved on. And what we've been working on is making this operation safer, more efficient, by the book. The mission is going to improve because of the changes we're making internally.
So what are the changes that they are making internally? Well, they haven't disclosed everything, but they had meetings with, of course, the governor of Minnesota. They had meetings with the attorney governor. That is, of course, Attorney General Ellison. And then after having those meetings, they have determined that they can actually scale down the amount of agents they have in the state. I don't know if they've started yet. I don't believe they have, but that the idea is that they're going to be scaling down the amount of officers in the state. Now, Homan was sure to clarify that they could further scale down the officers if local police cooperated with them, and essentially was saying if Minnesota cooperated with ICE, if local law enforcement worked for them, basically local law enforcement provided the protection for them, then they wouldn't need all these extra federal agents, and they could send even more away. So essentially they sent some away saying, if you want to see more go, then you have to cooperate with us more. There's other discussions about what they can do to find some compromise. But to be blunt, when it comes to the issues that Democrats are talking about in the Senate, When it comes to the issues that a lot of people in Minnesota care about, the fact that these agents are masked up, the fact that they refuse to identify themselves, the fact that they are able to avoid a warrant from a magistrate and instead are having administrative warrants from inside the organization. There's people worried about how ICE is interacting with locals, period. They just don't want them there. And no matter of what amount of solutions you could find, there's a certain amount of population, especially now at this point, after they've shot community members and then lied about the corpse. They just don't want them there. So you could find a certain amount of compromises to turn down the temperature, but there's going to certainly be an amount of the population that's just not going to want them there. So how do you find a compromise after this much damage has been done? Here's some of the rhetoric that he has put forward about these changes and his chats with Ellison, as we're still waiting to see if there's going to be any more changes, because right now, this is not what stops a government shutdown. A government shutdown looks almost unavoidable. No, it's unavoidable at this point.
Pleased to announce I had a very good meeting with Attorney General Ellison, and he has clarified for me that county jails may notify ICE of the release dates of criminal public safety risks so ICE can take custody of them upon the release from the jail. And let me tell you why that's important. I know people are a lot concerned about the manpower has been set in law enforcement manpower. Look, I've said this many times before. I've said it for the last several years. Give us access to the illegal alien public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail. It's common sense. It's safer for the community, it's safer for the agent, and it's safer for the alien. Because anything can happen on a street arrest. It just makes common sense. And for the people that argue, well, we're a welcoming community because we want victims and witnesses of crime that are here illegally to feel safe to come to police without fear of their work with ICE, we're not going to talk to the victim and witness of crime. There's no problem there. They should feel safe to come to the police and ask for help. All we want is to talk to the person that local and state law enforcement authorities locked in a jail cell. They chose to lock this person up. That's who we want to talk to, the public safety threat. So the argument is that protects victim witnesses of crime. It's a bunch of crap. Victims and witnesses of crime don't want the bad guy back in their neighborhood either. So great progress with the Attorney General and local sheriffs. And one thing, when we have these agreements, it takes less law enforcement agents to do the job. One agent can arrest one bad guy in the safety and security of a jail where he's behind the wire. We know we don't have weapons. But when you normally release that public safety threat, illegal alien back in the community, we have a job to do. We're going to arrest him. So we're going to find him. And what happens is now we got to arrest somebody on his turf. We have access to who knows what weapons. Now we got to send the whole team out. Cover the back door, cover the front door, officer safety reasons. Then because of the hateful rhetoric and the attacks on ICE officers, now we got to send a security team behind the arrest team. So what could have been done with one person in the safety and security jail, now we got 15, 16 people out there doing it. I know that causes stress in the community. So if we get these agreements in place, that means less agents on the street. More agents in the jail means less agents in the street. This is common sense cooperation that allows us to draw down on the number of people we have here. Yes, I said it. Draw down the number of people here. Because we have the efficiency and safety of the jails and the prison. Matter of fact, I have staff from CBP and from ICE working on a drawdown plan. What does that look like based on the cooperation? What does that look like based on how many targets we have?
Yeah, they're working on the drawdown plan. So We shall see that in the future. Here's another problem Democrats are putting forward with this, though, is even if they like some of these changes, even though that leaves a lot to be desired, obviously, for what they're asking for. What if the administration just went back on their word after the DHS funding bill was passed, and they just went back to the sweeping operations? They went back towards anybody they could grab, and then all of the things that they didn't back up on, whether it be officers not having to ID themselves or other issues, they just re-advance without congressional legislation, without it being outlined and passed by Congress. How is the Democrats supposed to trust the Trump administration heading into the midterms, heading into a period where the Trump administration might lose congressional power to, actually cooperate and keep up his end of the bargain? So a lot of Democrats, even if they were to get even more than this, they would still want to see it legislated, not just a managerial change that could be reshifted at a later date. By the way, Homan has gone so far in his rhetoric to say that he was begging for the last 2 months for the escalating rhetoric to stop. And he said in March, if the rhetoric didn't stop, there would be bloodshed.
I begged for the last 2 months on TV for the rhetoric to stop. I said in March, if the rhetoric didn't stop, there's going to be bloodshed. And there has been. I wish I wasn't right.
To be clear, when he talked about the rhetoric, the vast majority of the time, or basically all the times I saw him, the rhetoric he was asking for to be, to calm down was residents and citizens or legislators criticizing or demonizing ICE. Not the idea of these activist domestic terrorists, because if you tell an officer of the law you're about to go fight the terrorists in the streets, these activists are terrorists, they might be going out there like they're in a war zone, they're in a battlefield. They might be trigger happy, is the expression. Trigger happy.
I wish I wasn't right. I don't want to see anybody die. Not officers, not members of the community, and not the targets of our operations. For the people out there that don't like what ICE is doing, if you want certain laws reformed, then take it up with Congress. Again, ICE is making this up. They're enforcing.
What about with warrants? Take that up with Congress. Take that up with the Fourth Amendment.
Laws enacted by Congress and signed by the president. The same laws have been on the books for the last 6 presidents I worked for.
Yeah, but the Alien Enemies Act, but it's the way these laws are being used. The Alien Enemies Act in a non-wartime scenario, what was used to intern Japanese people. No, it's not always about what. Number one, the rules on the books maybe shouldn't be on the books, but even when the rules on the books are used, a lot of the times they're being used in circumstances they're not supposed to be used. Emergency powers being used to do every single executive action when it comes to the application of tariffs, as if every single tariff is a national security scenario that needs to be addressed. It's not just a question about what the law is on the books. It's also crooked interpretation of those laws on the books, disregard of those laws on the books. Here is a short question and answer time. He didn't do a long question and answer time. I will say he did a longer question and answer time than Trump, who just didn't take any questions, period, after his press conference today.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, please. Thank you.
Mr. President, can you respond to the new...
By the way, this is the second time he's done that today.
Thank you, please. Thank you.
Mr. President, can you respond to the new Fox poll that says people think ICE's tactics are too aggressive?
Thank you guys. First reporters, we're done. Thank you, cameras, we're going. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah. Are we gonna flip for this, or what are we gonna do?
So yeah, not a lot of question and answers right now, but we got one from Tom Homan that I thought was of interest and that we should pay attention to, specifically talking about Bovino having citizens stopped, American citizens who have to identify themselves in these types of sweeping operations. How was that allowed? How was that allowed considering the constitutionality of such an act? And He said the reason why is because of threats of violence.
Lopez from CNN. Mr. Homan, how did we get here in terms of you had Greg Bovino, who was the face of this immigration operation, the mission, as you say, to having border patrol agents in the interior of this country stopping U.S. citizens, asking them for ID, creating this fear in places like Chicago and now here. And then finally, it took really the death of Alex Petty for us to get here. How did that happen? Who made the decisions to allow this kind of operation to proceed in this way and to create such fear?
Well, look, the Border Patrol, last 4 years under Joe Biden, we have an open border.
By the way, the answer to who made the decision to allow, I mean, ultimately the buck stops with the president of the United States. But I mean, there could be a lower level administrative decision about why Bovino's position was created in the first place. And if the question is that, then Bovino's position was created by Kristi Noem, that likely at the directive from, again, the president of the United States.
Create such fear.
Well, look, the Border Patrol, last 4 years under Joe Biden, we have an open border where 10, 12,000 people a day are coming across the border. Border Patrol got overwhelmed, which means we sent thousands of ICE agents down there to help deal with that humanitarian crisis, and help secure the border. Now we have millions of people released in this nation, many unvetted. Now we got to find them. Before the big, beautiful bill, we had a total just under 5,000 deportation officers to look for millions of people, many in public safety threats. So yes, we needed Border Patrol to come and help on our mission now. And the reason for the massive deployment is because of the threats, because of the violence. Our officers need to be protected. If I'm on an operation, an arrest team, I'm going to a house, I got to be busy with that guy, the dangerous guy, and I can't keep looking over my shoulder at what's happening outside the house. So we brought extra resources in to provide that security. And as I said, as we drill down on these great agreements we got and this great understanding we have means less. So we can draw down those resources. When the violence decreases, we can draw down those resources. But based on the discussions I've had with the governor and the AG, we can start drawing down those resources as far as those looking for public safety threats being released, and do it in the jail with much less people. So the drawdown is going to happen based on these agreements. But the drawdown can happen even more if the hateful rhetoric and the impediment and interference will stop. So Border Patrol, I was a Border Patrol agent. These men and women are patriots. God bless them. They're here to help us. And the drawdown will come soon, depending on when this actually, I see this in play. But the agreements to have alone is going to cause a significant drawdown. So you're going to see a drawdown.
So the question was, how did we get here? How did we get here that it took the death of Alex Parenti for there to be a reassessment? And his answer to that question was, well, under the Biden administration, they let in so many illegals that we got overwhelmed, and that it eventually led to this response. Is that where the direction that he meant to talk? Did he just either A, completely pivot away, or B, is he trying to imply that the reason that we're here in the first place is because of the lack of security at the border on the Biden administration, leaving a burden so significant that ICE agents cannot identify themselves, so significant that the Fourth Amendment has to be bent, so significant that, the magistrate's judge isn't needed. You only need an administrative warrant. So significant that you have to have citizens identify themselves. I mean, citizens identifying themselves, how is that the one-to-one conclusion that you have to have citizens ID themselves? Papers, please. Because a lot of undocumented people entered the country under Biden? No, that's ridiculous. It's not that, I mean, you don't stop having freedom because there were a lot of undocumented people under the previous administration. The Constitution doesn't bend and change because you think an issue is of extreme import. I mean, the last time we've had a president seriously do that and get away with it was Abraham Lincoln, the suspension of habeas corpus when the nation was literally cut in two. and that was for a select few individuals. We're talking about any citizen anywhere having to identify themselves papers, please style. So I don't think this was a good answer to the question at all. When I said that Homan was better than Bovino, I was not trying to say that Homan exactly is a press darling. He wasn't. It's just that in comparison to Bovino, in comparison to the rhetoric of Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller, Homan seems like the storied, soft-spoken bureaucrat that is willing to, reach his hand across the aisle, even if it's just his pinky finger, to say stuff like, "We haven't been perfect." We haven't been perfect is just about as much of a condemnation of your own actions that you can even get in the Trump administration. And by comparison, when you listen to the difference in rhetoric, it's quite substantial. And so I think that is going to register amongst the public somewhat. I think that's going to register across the most people, but I don't think that that's going to change necessarily all of the actions of ICE officers. There has been a internal memo put out in ICE in Minneapolis saying, hey, if there is an agitator, if there's somebody coming up blowing a whistle or yelling at you or something like that, say you're that student, that young worker at Target who said, hey, F you, you're supposed to not engage with them. Yeah, that's probably how it should have been to begin with, that you don't just tackle somebody because they cussed at you, somebody blew a whistle, XYZ. But he is reemphasizing that in an internal memo. This is also supposed to be not only probably a compromise, but also them saving their own ass, because the more of these type of shootings that hit the headlines, the worse the reputation of ICE as an organization becomes, especially if you have to have the FBI director coming out and trudging upon and stepping upon the principles that uphold the Second Amendment in order to do it. And you have the president showing how ignorant he is about firearms. Very powerful, extra loaded gun with loaded magazine. Very powerful. Very powerful. You don't want to have to spend time doing that. You don't want to. And so you want somebody like this to try to die down the situation. But if the ICE officers keep behaving how they behave, if there's another interaction like this that leads to a fatality or a shooting, if there's more videos that come out showing ICE talking to people in a disrespectful manner, just the way they behave, I mean, it's just something that can't really be fixed overnight. It really isn't something that can be fixed overnight.